The Australian Financial Review.
We were given a lot of responsibilities from about 5 or 6 years of age. We were driving cars, driving our way to the bus stop and doing things that probably normal young kids...
You were driving to the bus stop at the age of 5?
6, we'd be sort of, I couldn't see over the steering wheel, but by saying you haven't got all the answers at that particular moment is actually a healthy thing. You'll find a lot more people willing to get in and help you if they know that you're struggling with it.
Hi, I'm Sally Patton, editor of Boss from the Australian Financial Review, and welcome to 15 Minutes with the Boss, a podcast about success and failure and everything in between. And of course, along the way, we're hoping to get some really great advice from our leaders. My guest today is John Longmire, the Executive Director of Club Performance at the Sydney Swans. Hi, John, how are you? Thank you so much for coming in.
Good to be here.
Now, John, as I said, you're the Executive Director of Club Performance at the Sydney Swans, but you were a senior coach of the team between 2011 and 2024. Under your leadership, the team won the Premiership flag in 2012 and made the grand final in 2014, 2016, 22 and 24. That's a lot of playing the whole season. Indeed, you coached the Sydney Swans for 333 games, and you're only one of 25 people in the AFL to have coached more than 300 games. And of course, before your coaching career, you were a player and you played for North Melbourne. That's a long time to have been involved in football and to have been involved in coaching. What's the best part about coaching?
I get asked a lot about what's best. Is it playing football or coaching football? And I'd always put coaching football at the top because you're a lot more aware of the impact on so many more people, from supporters to boards to coterie group sponsors, partners. You're so much more aware. And so when you become a coach, one of the great things is that the network and the reach you have is so big, and so many people love the game. We're the number one supported team in the country. So when so many people love your club and love the game, it's a great privileged position to be in. So
you just got all those stakeholders that you've got to sort of pay attention to.
Absolutely. You're much more aware of that. And when you're a player, you're essentially worried about your performance and your teammates' performance, and it's a bit more of a smaller view of the world, whereas when you're a coach, it's a lot more wider, and there's many stakeholders, many wide and varied, that adds pressure, but it also adds great joy and great reach to be able to get out to those people.
All right, John, we've only got 15 minutes. We better not waste any time. The clock starts now. My first question is, what happens at the beginning of your day? What time do you get up? What do you do?
I get up at 6 a.m. and I'm usually in at work at about 6:35, 6:40, so pretty quick transition into work, and then I'm either on a bike or I'm in the pool. So it's a general sort of 45-minute session before I have a shower and start my workday.
And do you do the breakfast thing?
I have breakfast at the club. So we have a great facility there, football club. And so I sit down and have breakfast there. It's a pretty light breakfast there.
And do you think about, having been a player and having been in high performance athleticism for so long, do you think about protein and what you're putting in your body in the morning?
Not really. I must admit.
That's refreshing.
Sally, I didn't. No, I don't think too much about that. It's what's available generally. It's what's available. We're lucky enough, a number of mornings a week, there's a team there that do some cooking. So when they're not there, we just help ourselves to whatever's available. So I'm not too fussy.
Okay. My next question is about a pivotal moment in your career. Was there something that you worked on, a big change that happened that really changed the whole trajectory of what you were doing?
There's probably two, if I can have two.
Sure, you can have two.
Thank you. There was probably one when I grew up on the farm as a 16-year-old. I was going to be a farmer. That's what my dad was, and I was really enjoying that type of lifestyle.
And where was the farm?
Down at Corowa in New South Wales on the Murray River. But at 16, the opportunity came to go to Melbourne and play professional AFL football, and I was given that decision-making process by myself. My parents said, "You make the call." So that was significant. I always thought I'd be down there for 2 years and come back, and I haven't quite got back there yet. So that was the first one. The second one was when I decided to come to Sydney. My wife and I, or my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, end of 2001, I was working for an international management group, one of the biggest sports management companies in the world. I'd retired from AFL football, was loving loving life, and then decided to jump into coaching. And that was a pretty significant moment, sort of 23 years ago, that's really changed where our family lives, as well as, what I do from that point onwards.
So when you were 16 and you first came to Melbourne, was that a total culture shock? Did it take you a long time to sort of get into Melbourne?
Absolutely. I was working in the city in an accounting firm, and I came straight from the farm
16?
at the 16, yeah. And so I was getting a train into work and back, and I was a fish out of water big time, and I probably struggled a fair bit early days. But they put us in clubhouses, so I was living with three other young fellas in a clubhouse, and we had great fun.
And do you think you learned anything from that idea of being the fish out of water?
Absolutely. It put me right out of my comfort zone at a very young age. I was used to being out of my comfort zone on the farm anyway. It was always, we were given a lot of responsibilities from about 5 or 6 years of age. We were driving cars, driving our way to the bus stop and doing things that probably normal young kids.
You were driving to the bus stop at the age of 5?
Yeah, well, 6. We'd be I couldn't see over the steering wheel, but we found a way to do it, because that's just what happened in the country. You just find a way, because your family, your mum and dad were pretty busy, so you just had to find a way of doing things. So when I went to Melbourne, it was another big step. I'd probably been used to making decisions, but that was a big step as a 16-year-old to move to the city for the first time without your family. But it also taught me to mature and grow up a lot, and I think that was good for me in the long run.
And what were those first year or two like as a coach? Did you take to that immediately? Was it quite difficult to move from that sort of player side to there being the coach and having people rely on you and ask you questions, and you can't be everybody's mate as the coach, right?
Yeah.
Whereas as a player, you're the mate.
Yeah, I retired at a young age too. I retired at 28, and then I spent 3 years working at IMG, and then went into assistant coaching under Paul Roos. And I guess I was still at the age of some of the players. Tony Lockett, for instance, made his comeback around that time, but I always found that okay. I didn't have too much drama with that, and I was very fortunate at the end of my assistant coaching period to be able to have a handover period into senior coaching with Paul Roos. So I was very fortunate to work with Paul for a long period of time. That taught me a lot about how to manage people.
Okay, interesting. My next question is, what is the best piece of career advice you've ever been given?
It's from an old coach I had, and it was, if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. I thought it was pretty succinct. It was very sort of straight down the line, and something I've turned to quite often. More so when you've got challenges and when you're going through some tougher times as a coach or a leader, you've got those, and often in the job that we're doing, high media scrutiny as well. When it feels a bit tough, you've got to remind yourself they're actually in a privileged position. And in our case, as a senior coach, there's only 18 in the country as in AFL coaches. So in the old adage of if it was easy, everyone would be doing it, stands pretty true.
So does that then give you confidence that someone has the confidence in you to do what you do? So you should have confidence in yourself that you'll get through the hard time.
Absolutely. There's faith that someone's got in you to be able to have that position of authority or leadership or whatever you like to call it, that they've got faith that you can get through any situation. And therefore you have great faith in yourself too, because that's probably the most important thing. Quite often early days you make a lot of mistakes, and you still make mistakes as you go through and you get older. I've got a 7 out of 10 leadership rule. If you get 7 out of 10 things right, that's a great result as a leader, but it automatically means you're going to get 3 out of 10 things wrong. But don't let those 3 stop you from doing the 7.
That's interesting though, the 7 out of 10 rule.
Yeah. I talk with our captains every year. I just talk to our leadership group, and particularly our captains, that they're not going to get everything right, but they're in that position because generally they get most things right. And I think that that's all you can expect.
But I think that's a challenge, because a lot of people do expect of themselves they will get everything right.
Yeah. For instance, when I first started senior coaching, I'd do a press conference and I wouldn't go to bed until I'd send it online. And used to be, back when I first started, I wasn't online until midnight. So I used to have to wait up until midnight just to make sure I didn't make any mistakes. And then I got to the point of I couldn't live like that. You couldn't keep being concerned about how many mistakes you made. So I came to really feel comfortable with making mistakes, particularly when you're making decisions all the time.
On that note, John, we are going to take a short break, but don't go away. When we come back, we're going to open the chatterbox.
Look forward to it.
Welcome back to 15 Minutes with the Boss. I'm here with John Longmire, the Executive Director of Performance at the Sydney Swans AFL team. Now, John, this is our section called the Chatterbox. In front of you is this lovely shiny brown box, inside which today are about 15 questions. I'm going to ask you to pick them out one by one, and we'll continue with a little bit more Q&A. Have a fish.
First one.
I get to read the questions. Thanks very much.
Okay.
Oh, yes,
Sorry.
I'm in control of this.
Okay, fair enough.
What's your favourite party story you like to share?
Ooh, I went to Las Vegas one year. Samuel L. Jackson hosted the ESPN Sports Awards, and I was fortunate enough afterwards to go to an after party and met Steven Seagal, Samuel L. Jackson, Andy Garcia, some of the biggest names in movies at the time. And Steven Seagal actually gave me his personal cell number. So we were managing Kathy Freeman at the time, who won the ESPN Sports Person of the Year. And he invited us down to his ranch in Texas, but never quite got there, unfortunately.
So you mentioned Kathy Freeman. How do you think someone like her would have handled the pressure that she was under in that 400-metre race at the Olympics in Sydney?
We were really fortunate that our company managed her, and I shared an office with the girl that was a personal manager. So we were able to see up close how she handled it. It was just an amazing experience. I mean, the way that she dealt with that, having the pressure of the nation on her at that moment, I'm not sure there would be too many people would have ever experienced the pressure that Kathy experienced at that final at the Sydney Olympics.
And do you think she has or had techniques to cope with that, like breathing or somehow being able to block out the pressure that was around her?
She had a few different things that she used to use, but she also had good people around her. Her team were really good people, and they were able to not shield her, I guess, but sort of use some space around her to be able to allow her to focus on what she needed to do. She needed to play a role and do a job, and her main job was running fast, and so her preparation was outstanding.
You would have had similar circumstances as a coach. You may not have the entire nation's eyes on the Sydney Swans, but there are a lot of very big pressure games. How did you coach, or how would you coach your team to how to deal with that pressure?
Usually try and particularly if things aren't going well, you try and get them to zero back in on to just do one thing really well. Because sometimes if you're thinking about all the noise that's around and you're listening to all the commentary around it, or you're not sure which way to turn, some of the best advice you can get, I think, is to just concentrate on what your job is, what your task is at that particular point, and make sure you do it really well. And that usually helps get through all the noise.
Right. Okay. I love that. Okay. Next question. Have a fish.
I'll hand it to you this time.
Okay. Thank you. Who is a leader, business or otherwise, whom you admire and why?
I've got a couple. Trent Robinson's a friend of mine who's coach of the Sydney Roosters. He's a wonderful leader over an extended period of time. I look at the ones that are able to do it over a long period of time at the height of their game, not just 1 or 2 years. I think he's been able to do that. And
what's made him special, do you think? Why do you admire him?
He knows his players. He knows his people. He knows how to get the best out of people, and I really admire that. I think it's one of the great strengths you can have as a leader or a coach. And in the business sense, I've got to know Robin Cooter, who's the CEO and founder of AirTrunk.
Yes.
And he's a Sydney Swan supporter.
I hear.
Yeah, and to hear what his story's like. Well, Robin built a company in 2015, started by himself, had the foresight to be able to come up with an idea and then the courage to be able to back that in. And then he got the right people around him, and then 9 years later sold the company for $24 billion. That's right, $24 billion. And then he was able to reward the people that went on the journey with him. So what a great story.
And the company's in data centre, right?
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. So what I loved about it is how he shared, when he eventually sold the company, how he shared the profits with a lot of his staff and a lot of the people that came on the journey with him, and just talks to the quality of person and how he appreciates the people that help build the company with him.
And do you think that's in general very important to share the spoil, share the benefits, the joy of attaining something amazing?
We can imagine the loyalty you get out of that, or the dedication from your staff you get out of that, or the love from your staff is incredible. If you've got staff that genuinely love coming to work because they've got skin in the game, and they get rewarded for that, whether it's financially or otherwise from a leader, they're going to give you a lot more. But the people at AirTrunk have given a fair bit over the last few years, and hopefully they're rewarded well.
Yeah, true. Have another fish. So what has been the hardest day of your career, or the hardest thing you've had to do?
Pick a football club up after a devastating loss and when you're not feeling great yourself. So when things are feeling really bad and you feel it's a very public sense, in particularly the game that we play being a national game, it's very public. And on the biggest stage in front of 100,000 people and millions on television, and to be able to lead the club, I guess, through that, but also how to respond on a Monday in a personal sense is really important. So you're aware of how everyone's feeling on an emotional sense. You're aware of how your players, your staff, everyone around you is feeling. But then you need to make sure that you look after them, care for them in the right way, and then give the right message to your supporters. So, yeah, those are challenging moments that you've got to make sure that you get the messaging right.
So do you, to an extent, have to put a bit of a barrier up in front of you and block out what's happened so that you can front up to the media, you can front up to your players? Do you have to sort of block yourself for a little while?
In certain circumstances you do, but in other circumstances, and particularly when you're talking with the players, I think you let them in to how you're feeling. There's certainly some of the things I've learned as a leader over a long time is the more vulnerable you are, the more connected the people are around you. And rather than standing up and telling them this is the way you should feel or this is what you should do, tell them how you're going and actually be quite open with them, and adds a connection that's that you'll be paid back many years down the track. And by saying you haven't got all the answers at that particular moment is actually a healthy thing. You'll find a lot more people willing to get in and help you if they know that you're struggling with it. And I think in the end, that's a really positive thing. I think the most vulnerable leaders are the ones that get the most out of their staff. And by saying that you haven't got all the answers all of the time is actually a positive thing. I think that's been the biggest shift I've seen in leadership in probably the last 20 years.
Now, I don't want to focus on the negative because getting to the grand final so many times is such an amazing achievement. But is there any one particular grand final loss that sort of stands out more so than the others? No, they're all tough ones. Yeah. They're all tough ones, and each grand final's got their own storyline to it. I'm fortunate that we were able to win one. Would have been great to win 2 or 3 more. And you've been there. That's right. That's the important thing. That's right. Yeah, interesting. Okay. On that note, John, you have passed with flying colours the Chatterbox section. I am now going to ask you one more question, which we ask everybody who comes in, and that is, if you weren't doing your current role, what would you be doing? I'd most likely be a farmer. Oh, you'd go back to the farm? I'd be back to the farm. I've been meaning to go back there for many years, but my brother won't let me drive the tractors these days because they're worth over $1 million each, and he probably doesn't trust me. Why would you want to be a farmer? I guess it's in my blood. It's where I grew up. It's where I was born. My whole family are still back there. I go back there every summer for harvest. I love it. It's just, once it's there, it's hard to get out of your system. It's my downtime. When I want to switch off from football, I talk to my brother on the phone about farming. It's a great part of, very fortunate part of my growing up. I love that. Okay. On that note, John, our time is up. John, it's been so great talking to you today, and I really love the idea that these jobs aren't easy. If they were easy, everybody would do it. So you just have to learn to back yourself. You've obviously been dealing with pressure for a long, long time. It's been great hearing how you've managed to do that. And also that idea that you need to get things right 7 times out of 10. The 7 in 10 rule is something that I will definitely take back with me. So thank you again so much for allowing us to spend 15 minutes with the boss. Thanks, Sally. And thank you to everyone for listening. If you like the podcast and would like to hear more, consider sharing the podcast or writing a review, as it helps us to reach more people, and follow us wherever you get your podcasts. At the Financial Review, we investigate the big stories about markets, business and power. For more, go to afr.com, and you can subscribe to the Financial Review, the daily habit of successful people, at afr.com/subscribe. This podcast was hosted by me, Sally Patton, and produced by Lap Fan. Our theme is by Alex Gow. Our head of podcast is Lap Fan, and the head of premium content is Fiona Buffini.
The Australian Financial Review.